Stanford at Notre Dame. Marco, what should bettors be looking at?
There's one question, and we're going to find the answer in this podcast. Is Stanford really as good as they've looked in the first 3 games?
Are they?
Well, I'm going to say they are, and it's going to go that this offense is unbelievable for Stanford this year. And what I've seen of the Notre Dame defense so far, it's going to be a scary thought seeing the Stanford offense come rolling into South Bend.
Now, Stanford has outscored opponents this year so far 52-14.
Hard to argue with those numbers. Equally hard to argue with is Notre Dame defense gave up over 500 yards to Michigan and then almost 500 yards to Michigan State last week. And those offenses, are a lot of running and power football too, where Stanford's wide open. It's scary what could happen this week in South Bend.
Okay, now with the line at 4.5, Stanford is a road favorite. That screams Stanford, it would seem. Now, it's always, I'm conflicted right now because on one hand, whenever you think, this Notre Dame team's not as good as people think, Stanford's really awesome. Stanford's going to be motivated. It's a big TV game. You would think that the line could be much higher and be reasonable. Does this feel like a trap to you, which is something you're always sniffing out?
It's something that, when you look at it and see, it's again, which way do you want to look at this? Because first thought, you think of Notre Dame at home as an underdog, period, draws your attention, as an average bettor. But as you look at how good Stanford is, the 4.5...
And those big scores, we talk about the different levels of handicapper, and at the most surface level is a score handicapper. 52, to 14, that's extreme. Stanford's awesome. Not digging deeper into the actual box score, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is the average bettor going to be more intrigued by Notre Dame, who's 1-2, right? 1-2 at home, or are they going to be as a dog, or are they going to be more intrigued by Stanford that's dominating on the scoreboard, being less than a touchdown favorite?
It's tough to get into what the public perception is going to be because everything you're saying is true about Stanford, but even though Notre Dame's 1-2, the 2 losses came down to the last play of the game in both of them.
So you could be saying they could be 3-0. Okay. Speaking of the last play of the game, how does that fake field goal run by Michigan State, how does that affect Notre Dame coming in this game?
Well, there's a lot of handicappers that believe teams coming off an overtime loss, that it's an extreme negative going into the next week. It's a handicapping angle. Notre Dame, because, this is a rivalry game. Stanford is one of those teams they play every year, and that's something that we'll point out. When teams come to South Bend, we say it's such a big deal, that they're intimidated by going to South Bend. Because they go every year, that's a little bit negated for a Stanford team rather than somebody that maybe makes a trip once every 10 years to Notre Dame. So no advantage point there. Notre Dame, this will be a test for them this week. They've got to crank up that offense to be able to trade points. I don't think they can fix the defense. The defense has way too many holes. This is, again, you want to talk about a correlated parlay. If you're going to like Stanford in the game, you're going to have to like the over in this game.
But you just said that if Notre Dame's going to be in it, they're going to have to score with them. So it sounds like you like the over no matter what.
Pretty much this one, yeah.
All right, so your point is that you're seeing you're figuring Stanford's putting up 40 regardless. The question is it going to be 40-17 or is it going to be 40-38?
Well, actually, I say it's going to be 41-27.
All right, so your official projection, 41-27, so that goes over and that goes Stanford.
Goes Stanford.
Okay, now, I always like to fade Notre Dame, so we can agree on that. At home, they have won 17 and lost 35 ATS. That's over 66%. If all you did was fade, say Notre Dame's overrated, and at home they're especially overrated. I'm playing against them every week. Let's think about this. This is 52 games, so this is over about 10 years. For a decade, you could have been since you've been 45, you could have, wait, is that right? You could have started fading Notre Dame, at home and been over 66. You didn't have to do any other handicapping.
Now, with that said, this is a number that, and I don't have it in front of me, and it would be good to follow up on the post afterwards on our videos, is break that down and see what were they when they were a dog at home. Because most of those games in that ATS grouping that you put there, Notre Dame would have been a favorite.
No doubt, but what I'm saying is, in a systemic fashion, they're overrated. You're getting a couple extra points whenever you fade Notre Dame, and apparently at home even more so. This isn't 7-3 or 3-7. This is 52 games at 66%. I fade Notre Dame every chance I get, though unfortunately when I faded them last week, I lost by the hook. But we'll be getting into that when we get into your best bet. Speaking of that, well, first, it's your turn to join the conversation in the comment section with me and Marco. Next up, you're going to see Marco's best bet on the West Virginia LSU game. And unfortunately, because of that half a point, me paying Marco off on last week's bet.